Hello and good morning. We welcome you all at the 52nd edition of Water Talk presented by National Water Mission, Ministry of Jal Shakti and organized by APEC News Network. And we are glad to inform all of you that we're joined by two eminent speakers, one from the government part, one from the scientific world, if I may say so. We are joined by uh, Ms. Archana Verma, IAS. She's the Mission Director, National Water Mission Additional Secretary, Mr. Jal Shakti, Government of India. We welcome you, ma'am. Thank you so much for joining us today. And we're also joined by Dr. Veena Srinivasan, Executive Director of Well Labs. Well, she's one of the top scientists in the world, and she has done a lot of work when it comes to taking the benefits of scientific research to the grassroots level when it comes to livelihood development and also community development. So, this is the list of speakers for this session of Water Talk. And as you already know, that National Water Mission has been organizing this Water Talk series for last 4 years or so, where they bring best of the minds together and hear their expert opinion on how various aspects of water ecosystem can be improved. What are the challenges, what are the opportunities, and where government, industry, academia can come together to make that future road path. The underlining theme of this session is empowering women and communities through uh, inclusive water security indicator. That's a very important part of water management, if I may say so. We are talking about a lot of interventions that's being taken to improve the water management in the country. But what are the indicators? How those indicators are being measured, and what are the role of women as a community in terms of addressing those challenges, and how women empowerment is ensuring water empowerment of the citizens, if I may say so. So, without taking much time, I'll hand over the session to Archana Verma, ma'am, for her opening remarks. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Shavik. A very good morning to you all. I welcome heartily Dr. Veena Srinivasan, who's the Executive Director of Well Labs, and uh, uh, are looking forward to to hear you on this very pertinent topic of empowering women in communities through inclusive water security indicators. Because as you know, whatever gets measured gets done is a saying, and so yes, apart from inclusive policies, it's very important to measure those. So I'm sure that your talk today would be very insightful and would greatly enrich us in learning about indicators and how to measure the participation of women in the workforce in water management. As you all know, that the scorching heat in Delhi has and the concomitant water stress which the national capital regime is facing is a testimony to the how climate change exacerbates water scarcity, and it becomes harder for people to secure water, but it has more pronounced effects on women because women as primary caregivers, they are the ones who are burdened with the onerous responsibility of saving water, and be it for the household or for the agricultural fields, they are the ones who bear the burden the most. And in that process, they sometimes lose out on education, on employment opportunities. I would not know the data, but yes, there evidentially there are a lot of girls who drop out from schools because they have to fetch water from miles and miles, and even in urban area they have to wait for tankers because it's usually the girls who are sent to fetch water or the women who go to fetch water, so they lose out on a lot of opportunities which further enhances inequalities. So, gender inequality in water management is a big challenge, and empowering women for more inclusive policies in water management is the way ahead. And I am happy to report that the government of India is, has taken a lot of initiatives to mainstream women in the water management agenda and to remove the barriers which they face, both in rural and urban areas, in coming out and participating in water management. So we have these schemes like the Jal Jeevan Mission, which is comprising of 50% of women in the water health, water sanitation committees, has to have 50% women in the water management. You have examples of Orissa, which has legislated Pani Panchayats, which is manned primarily by women, and then you have examples even in Narega, where women participation for the management of the water bodies has been emphasized upon. You have Panchayati Raj Ministry, which has also mainstreamed women in the management of water resources. We have acknowledged and given respect to a lot of women water warriors from the Panchayati Raj, from the self-help groups, and the Jal Shakti Abhiyan of 2024 has the motto of Nari Shakti Se Jal Shakti, which shows the deep interdependence of women and water. So, this is our motto and pledge for this year's Abhiyan under the National Water Mission. And we hope to really sensitize districts and people in general about the role of women in water, about the interdependence and interlinkage between the SDG goals of gender equality and water and sanitation for all. But as I said, that whatever gets measured gets done. So we look forward, I'll not take much time because this session is usually for gaining insights from the speaker. So I look forward to hear more from you, Dr. Veena Srinivasan, on while we are doing a lot in this sector in trying to mainstream women, and a lot has also happened, not only as as water warriors, even dam engineers in Kerala uh, are women, and they have really performed well wherever dam engineers have been found to be women. They are in the O&M operation and maintenance of the Jal Jeevan mission, and they have also taken up roles which are considered more, so to say, manly. So but yes, we need more women participation. We need more project managers in utilities. We need more Vad Sabha members as women participating in water related issues. A lot of scope is still there. A lot of things have been done. So over to you, Savik, and we request Dr. Veena to take forward the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Adnan, uh, for sharing your thoughts on what is the overall vision of government of India in terms of uh, uh, women empowerment for effective water management, and what are the steps being taken by government of India, and how women participation has increased over the years through government of India's conducive policies. So, as you have said, without taking much time, I hand over the session to Dr. Veena Srinivasan for her presentation. So over to you, Dr. Veena.
Thank you so much, Archana ma'am. It's a real pleasure to be here. And I wanted to start by saying, uh, firstly, I'm based in Bangalore. हम कर्नाटक में हैं, तो मुझे हिंदी में बात करने की थोड़ी सी आदत छूट गई है, तो आप कृपया कोई भी गलतियों को प्लीज क्षमा करें. आई विल ट्राई टू स्पीक इन बोथ हिंदी एंड इंग्लिश टू be inclusive for the audience, because I believe it's a cross country audience. Um, we can start sharing the slides. तो इस वेबिनार के लिए मुझे जो टॉपिक दी गई है, नारी शक्ति से जल शक्ति, जो थीम है, आई थिंक इट्स वेरी एप्ट, बिकॉज एट दिस पॉइंट इन आवर कंट्री we have three very progressive women at the leadership. Archana ma'am in National Water Mission, Devashri Mukherjee ma'am at Secretary Water Resources, and then Mary Munjal in Jal Shakti. And so I think it's a very apt time to talk about Nari Shakti se Jal Shakti, because I would say हमारे देश की नेतृत्व अब तीन बहुत प्रोग्रेसिव महिलाएं में शामिल है. Can we share the slides, please? Thank you. So, just one thing about ourselves. Well Labs is a water systems research and innovation lab. हम एक जल अनुसंधान एवं नवाचार केंद्र है, और बैंगलोर में हम स्थित है. So, I needn't tell this audience that India faces a very severe water crisis, as was mentioned, particularly in face of climate change. And the main point is हमारे देश बहुत भौगोलिक रूप से बहुत विविध है, और इसका मतलब है कि और इसका परिणाम है कि अलग अलग जगहों में अलग अलग समस्याएं हैं. पानी की कमी का भी समस्या है, और पानी की प्रदूषण का समस्या, और अनाधिक जल का भी समस्या है. और द मेन पॉइंट हियर इज दैट अलग अलग जगहों में अलग अलग समस्याएं हैं, बट आप अगर यह स्लाइड को गौर से देखें तो आपको समझ में आएगा कि अगर आप पेनिनसुला इंडिया में देखें तो यहाँ पे दो मैप्स है. लेफ्ट हैंड साइड पे ग्राउंड वाटर ओवर एक्सप्लॉइटेशन CGWB का के द्वारा जो मैप बनाया गया है, और इसमें ओवर एक्सप्लॉइटेड सेमी क्रिटिकल ब्लॉक्स का मैप है. और राइट हैंड साइड पे रेन फेड एग्रीकल्चर का जो डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन है, इसका मैप हमें दिखाई देता है. तो यहाँ पे अगर आप देखेंगे, दिस इज द परसेंटेज ऑफ लैंड जो रेन फेड है, मतलब बारिश पे आधारित कृषि जो हम बोलते हैं. अब अगर आप पेनिनसुला इंडिया में देखें तो आप देखेंगे कि एक ही ब्लॉक में दोनों समस्याएं साइमल्टेनियसली है. मतलब लार्ज फ्रैक्शन ऑफ द लैंड इज रेन फेड, बहुत ही रेन फेड फार्मर्स है यहाँ पे, और साइमल्टेनियसली इन्हीं ब्लॉक्स में ग्राउंड वाटर ऑलरेडी ओवर एक्सप्लॉइटेड हो गई है. तो ये प्रॉब्लम अगर हम गौर से देखें तो हमें समझ में आएगा कि ये पानी की समस्या डिस्क्राइब करने के लिए इट्स क्वाइट अ कॉम्प्लिकेटेड process, because you need to kind of look at this layering. अलग अलग समस्याएं हैं, मगर एक ही जगह में मल्टीपल तरह तरह की समस्याएं एक साथ प्रस्तुत हो सकती है. तो द सेकेंड पॉइंट आई वांटेड टू मेक इज ऑफ कोर्स, जो हम महिलाएं के बारे में इस थीम ऑफ नारी शक्ति से जल शक्ति is the theme of this webinar series, and we should note that हर जगह जो भी समस्याएं हैं, महिलाएं पानी से के संकट से विशेष रूप से प्रभावित होती है. और इसका ये परिणाम है कि अगर हम डिजाइन जो बोलते हैं हमारी स्कीम्स को विमेन सेंट्रिक नहीं बनाएं तो विमेन आर इवन फर्दर अफेक्टेड. एंड इस टॉक में I'll talk a little bit more about this problem. And अगर पानी के संकट से वुमेन तरह तरह के पाथवेज से प्रभावित होती है, तो women's labor increases both to collect water as well as if agriculture failures happen, the additional effort put in crop sustenance. Of course, women are the nurturers of the family. Women महिलाएं परिवार की देखभाल का उनका प्राइमरी रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी रहती है. रहता है. तो any direct implications on of pollution, of crop failure and therefore nutrition loss, the burden falls on the women. And then of course आर्थिक रूप से भी महिलाएं प्रभावित होती है. अगर क्रॉप यील्ड्स कम क्रॉप फेलियर की वजह से या तो क्रॉप पेस्ट की वजह से जो भी हो, women are immediately affected. So I think the important point here is that if we don't design with women in mind, all of these different implications and the very basis of the family is affected. Um, Now the irony is that even though women are the most affected, women पानी के संबंधित निर्णय लेने के लिए उनका अधिकार सबसे कम रहता है. That means they have the least decision making power often because of the way the schemes are designed. And so I'd like to talk about each of these different aspects in this talk. Noting that the different ways in which women are excluded. Often they don't own land, but the schemes are linked to land ownership. तो अगर हम कैनाल कमांड एरियाज में देखें तो मेंबरशिप जो है वाटर यूजर कोऑपरेटिव्स में वो लैंड ओनिंग के आधार पे आधारित है, और इसकी वजह से ऑफन वुमेन मेंबरशिप और पार्टिसिपेशन इन द डिजाइन कम रहता है. इवन दो हम लोग वी recognize increasingly that agriculture is getting feminized, but in spite of that, women have less say in the distribution of water often because of the scheme design. Similarly, although borewells are privately owned, the schemes, the subsidy schemes are more easily accessed by men. It could be because they have the access to the cell phones and some of the information comes to them first. And then similarly, whenever there's mechanization, anything which involves technology, often women are included much later or not, don't feel comfortable participating in the programs, or the training is not designed for women. So all of these reasons result in the fact that even though women are most burdened, they are often the least included in the decision making. So now the overall message is that we need solutions. The solutions need to solve, they have to be effective, and they have to improve equity. So हमें ऐसे समाधानों की आवश्यकता है जो प्रभावी हो और समानता बढ़ाए, both women as well as marginalized groups. So the first question I want to answer is, how do we find the right solution? सही समाधान कैसे खोजे हम? And this speaks to the indicators work that I was going to do. So as Archana ma'am ने कहा पहले, जो मापा जाता है वही प्रबंधित होता है. तो the question is, हम करेक्ट इंडिकेटर, सही मेट्रिक्स जो है, सही संकेतक जो है, कैसे खोजे, कैसे आइडेंटिफाई करें. So अगर हम we just look at typical watershed development, often there is a confusion that we find where if you go and ask different NGOs in the country, आप watershed development कर रहे हैं, इसका how do you measure success? आपको कैसे पता चलता है कि ये जो आप एक्टिविटीज कर रहे हैं ये सक्सेसफुल है, कि ये प्रभावी है कि नहीं. And we find कि different NGOs give us very different indicators for the same intervention. So for the same set of interventions around water security planning or watershed development, in some places people are measuring groundwater level. They're saying कि has the जो भूजल है उसका जो लेवल है क्या वो ऊपर बढ़ रहा है. The same NGOs at sometimes will be looking at income, or other NGOs will be looking at have farmers got a second crop? So is their access to irrigation increased in the dry season? Now, actually, if you look carefully at some of these indicators, these are opposing indicators. See, if we take water out for the rabi crop, अगर हम भूजल से aquifer से पानी निकालें to extend irrigation, there's going to be less water available in the water table. So if you're measuring water table as an indicator, you can't also be measuring expansion of irrigation as an indicator. You either leave water in the ground so that the level increases, or you use water to expand irrigation and potentially increase income. But these tensions are often not resolved. So this is the reason why metrics are really, really important. The second thing that we find is, if we look at what measures a lot of NGOs on the ground currently are following, they are what would be we would call intervention specific. That means the जो संकेतक है वो समाधान विशिष्ट है. That means they are related to the indicator. For example, one common one that we see a lot of NGOs across the country, including donors, I would say the CSR donors also, they look at the before and after and they count the amount of storage. जो जल भंडारण जो हम बोलते हैं, जितने storage structures, whether check dams or pump ponds or whatever, and they count this as the indicator, and they say, have you increased the amount of storage, right? So the problem with this particular indicator is that firstly, at some point, you will have saturated. That means as many structures as you can build, you would have finished building, and then that indicator no longer is relevant because you're continuing to add storage structures when actually that watershed doesn't need any more storage structures. The second problem is that storage may not be the problem. It may not be the thing that you need to be doing in that particular watershed. So this issue of basically saying that my metric is storage structures and people are investing in storage structures, and then I measure success by saying, did I increase storage structures? It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. And this may not result in anything meaningful on the ground for the farmers or the community. And so what we would like to say is, instead of indicators that are intervention related, uh, right? We need indicators that measure the state of water security in the landscape itself in a reliable, consistent way across time. So हमें ऐसे संकेतों की जरूरत है जो जल सुरक्षा की स्थिति को मापे, not just the intervention itself. So it's the outcome, not the output. And we should be able to do this consistently. If we get a good grip on this, that means we define water security properly, and we have, it's like a thermometer. जैसे हम thermometer, use करते हैं to measure how high your temperature is. उसी तरह से we have to say what's the indicator that's measuring the state of water security, जो जल सुरक्षा मापे. Let's just unpack this a little bit. What do I mean? I mean, what we're trying to say is that in different parts of the country, you have different aquifer characteristics, different geographic characteristics. जो हमने कहा कि भौगोलिक रूप से भारत बहुत विविध है. So if you look at storage, which is how this is one particular way of classifying. But if you look at storage and recharge, you have parts of the country which are what we call high storage, very low recharge. Example of this is Punjab and Haryana, where there's a big alluvial aquifer underneath. Barish बहुत कम है, it's only 400 mm. But that aquifer is very, very plentiful. Over millions of years, that water, it's like a big bathtub, like a big bank account which has been filled, and we are gradually drawing it down. Right? So that is the low recharge, high storage aquifer. So in places like that, farmers are not immediately suffering. If you see in a high rainfall year or a low rainfall year, irrigation area in Punjab and Haryana doesn't change. Over a 10-20 year period, the groundwater levels drop. But on a year-to-year basis, they are completely climate resilient. Right? But it's a long-term problem because one day that water will go away. Then you have high storage, high recharge aquifers, which are less of a problem. And you may see many parts of Bihar which have these kinds of characteristics, where the problem is not either rainfall nor is it storage in the aquifer in some places, but it's that the areas are poor, so farmers have not yet got the money to be able to exploit the groundwater. And then you have the low storage, high recharge aquifers of many parts of peninsular India, where every year it rains, but there's very little storage. So what we are seeing in Bangalore right now, that we had 4 good years of rain, but it doesn't help you. One bad year of rain and you don't have enough storage in the aquifer to store water year on year. So basically, as I was saying, this recharge is also important and storage is also important. And the way we design the solution has to be fit for purpose. So now when we start looking at indicators, I'll give you some examples of indicators we're looking at. We are looking at availability, for example, which is the water available year on year for over a long period of time. Access is, do farmers have enough access for to grow a second crop? Productivity is, are they using the water efficiently, or like in Punjab and Haryana, you're using the water to grow paddy, for example, or you're using the water to grow sugarcane. Your productivity of the water, that is the rupees per meter cube earned is very low. And then resilience, how resilient are you to wet and dry years? If the rainfall drops by 10%, 20%, does your cropping get completely wiped out or just a little bit wiped out? So there are different dimensions, and these dimensions of water security are related to the different types of conditions you have in terms of rainfall, in terms of aquifer storage, and so on. So this is what we mean when we say that जो हम संकेतक जो जल संकेतक है वो fit for purpose होने चाहिए. They have to be matched to the geographical conditions. The second, there's one point I wanted to make here, which I haven't shown. We have a product called Jaltol that we are working on, where we have the ability to, it's a web app, where we have the ability to design monitoring and evaluation interventions, where you can pick control and treatment villages and look at different indicators. And the control and treatment villages, it will tell you whether there's a difference between your controls, and it does this automatically. The app is under development. We are beta testing it, but if there's any NGO that wants to partner with us in this, we would be delighted to partner with you. Okay. The second part of my talk is about how do you design for equity. सामान्यता के लिए हम intervention design कैसे करें. And here I think that it matters which aspects of design are focused on, whether the intervention as a whole is women sensitive or not. So one very clear indication is if you focus on reduction of drudgery, if that is a important goal of the intervention, then automatically that intervention will benefit women, because in most of the cases, women do the labor, the drudgery part of the work. So certain types of interventions where this is not focused on, for example, when you move to NPM or you move to certain types of natural farming, often what happens is that the women have to do the weeding and so on and so forth. So focusing actively on saying how do I reduce drudgery will immediately benefit. Secondly, we see a lot of women telling us over and over again that the timing and location and the way capacity building is done really matters, the delivery mode. If it's done in certain hours of the day which are the peak, so women often say only 10 to 4. And within the district, not so far from the house. So often these types of decisions on how the training is done and where, if it's hybrid mode, is there a center which, if they don't have the phone, is there a center in every village that it can be delivered through? That may decide whether women are getting capacitated or not. And then Archana ma'am already mentioned many government schemes which already mandate that it has to be 50% women participate, not just membership, but leadership. Then there are certain other types of things, which is what types of criteria are used, for example, in loans. And are these the criteria which benefit women or they exclude women? And just paying attention to these types of criteria, asking these questions. Similarly, looking at the pathways by which the subsidies are written, the way the contracts are written, and do they benefit women or not? And then finally, most importantly, tracking the metrics. Again, coming back to metrics and looking at metrics which are disaggregated so that the women particularly are benefited. Finally, we want to ask the question of, instead of just looking at women as beneficiaries, how do we ensure that women are actually becoming leaders and taking a role in transformation? So this is what we mean by Nari Shakti se Jal Shakti, and ise kaise paya jaye? How do we create this? So I wanted to give a couple of examples which I recently saw in the field, which I thought was very, very inspiring. So we visited Vasan, which is one of the well-known large non-profits in the country, in Anandpur a couple of weeks ago. And they have a very innovative solution of groundwater collectivization, where the borewell owning farmers share water with rainfed farmers, and they have incentives, and there's a particular incentive design for them to participate in this. Rainfed farmers get, instead of not having any water, they get water for critical irrigation. Now, the very interesting thing is, how did anybody agree? Why would farmers voluntarily agree to share their bore wells with others? How did this conversation even start? And the interesting thing is, it started with the Mandal Mahila Samkhya, which is the Mandal level women's committee. They Vasan targeted them first. They were convinced, and then they brought the rest of the village around to say, this is a really good idea, it benefits everybody. And so this was a case where the women were not just recipients of an idea. It was not like it was designed for them. It is that they were the ones who took the leadership, and they made this entire scheme, which is very very innovative, happen. And it would not have happened if the women hadn't come together and said, no, we want a solution that benefits the rain-fed farmers and prevents competitive deepening of bore wells. That's the other part of, because everybody shared water, nobody was drilling. The competitive deepening of wells, which happens everywhere else, didn't happen. And so, very, very inspiring women led story. Another example, I was in Orissa a couple of weeks ago, where government of Orissa, this is a government scheme, designed the Amapokri scheme. But very interestingly, they had already created the mission and strengthened the women's self-help groups under Mission Shakti. And the interesting innovation that they did was to, instead of giving money to contractors, to give small contracts. And this could just be DVDing, it could just be lake maintenance of these small water bodies, but to give the money, deposit the money directly into the bank accounts of the Mission Shakti group. So now women became not just recipients or beneficiaries; they became keepers of the natural resource in the place. And not only that, you could see the tremendous pride in these Mission Shakti groups. Wherever we went, they were so proud at how they had rejuvenated all these water bodies, because and essentially they had managed to do this in lieu of contractors, which is the often the more powerful men. So it was a very dramatic transformation of an example of Nari Shakti se Jal Shakti, which I thought might be interesting and can be replicated in other parts. And then, of course, it's UP's Jal Shakti program. Many people have heard of this, of under Jal Jeevan Mission, training women to become watchdogs of water supply. They are the most affected, and therefore have the greatest stake in ensuring that their families are secure and healthy. And if it's done the right way, they are actually trained not only to do the test, but also who to approach, how to undertake corrective actions. Then again, it becomes an example of connecting, closing the loop, where women who are most affected are also the ones who are empowered to actually take the corrective action. So I just thought I would end with those three examples of Nari Shakti se Jal Shakti, and pointing out that in each of these three cases, these are not the typical roles that we assign to women, where we say that you do the labor part, and the real work is done by other more powerful groups, whether it's men or any who are contractors, whoever it may be. But it's a case of putting women in front, and actually in the forefront, and ensuring that they take a leadership, and they actually get taken to the next level of empowerment through these schemes. I'll end with that. I will just say that if you want to participate with, partner with us on capacity building of monitoring and evaluation, but we are a very women-centric organization ourselves, also a very tech-forward organization. But if you think that there is a way for us to partner, अगर आप हमारे साथ collaborate करना चाहें, तो please write to us. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Veena Srinivasan, for an insightful presentation. I will request Ms. Archana Verma if she has to add something on this presentation, and then we can take some questions. I can see lines of questions are there. So, Archana ma'am, if you want to add something on this presentation.
Can we take the questions first?
Yeah, sure. We can take that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and just to inform you that a lot of delegates are waiting at the backstage. So, I request them, the link has been shared with you. If you can just kindly click that link and join the backstage. And before asking question, please introduce yourself so that we know who are you while asking the question. So, you can join that link and ask your question by introducing yourself. Let them join. I think in the meantime we have a couple of questions which has come to me. I can maybe I can start with that. This is by Dr. Emil Gaur. He's the Vice Chancellor of Dr. C.V. Raman University from the state of Bihar. He has asked that how can we leverage the existing role of women in reliable water data collection and acting as a first responder in this mission. So maybe Dr.
I
Veena.
see that Dr. Gaur is on screen as well, so he can ask.
Dr. God, you can go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much. It's a really very wonderful seminar, and in my 40 years, I have seen. We took 75 years to realize that the Ministry of Water Resources must be Ministry of Jal Shakti. The Shakti is added after 75 years, and women are the real Shakti of the world. I can say the power lies in women. So it's a right time to have this seminar where women can be a part of this. Our the worst thing is data. We are poor in data. Our data is very scarce, unreliable, unrealistic, non-related. If your data is poor, your information is poor. If your information is poor, your knowledge is poor. And if your knowledge is poor, your wisdom is poor, and poor wisdom gives you poor policy. We are struggling with poor policy in last 75 years. So, madam, the involvement of women in data collection could be a, very, one of the things that can change the scenario. I have worked in 7 8 states with the women's organization in catchments, watersheds in the country. 40 years experience says still we are not able to put correct amount of data, and that comes from the present technology, sensor based, IoT based, satellite based. Those can be fused in the movements can be made digital movement to collect the data, give the data, and they are the most sincere data collectors, I can say.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
This is my view.
And I request, thank you.
Absolutely, sir. I agree 100%. You've made a fantastic point, and I completely agree. And I think it's only a matter of setting up the capacity or the capacity building in that way. And absolutely right.
I request the guests who are joining to ask questions. Just limit themselves only to the question, maybe one question, so that many questions can be answered by both Archana Verma and Dr. Veena Srinivasan. So I see one question. It has come to a chat by Dr. Renu Srivastava. How does water management intervention differ between rural and urban area? I think that's also an important aspect. That
Absolutely. I
I
I
think
can
that's
see
also
she's on the
fine. Yes,
screen.
yes, also. Oh, that's great.
Yeah, Dr. Srivastava, why don't you give us a
I just introduce myself. I am joining from Bhopal, IES College, IES University, and I'm a professor, English language. So pleased to be here. And the question is already there. So, what is the difference between the urban and the rural
absolutely?
intervention?
I think it's a very good question. I think that one of the things that we see, I mean, firstly, there's a difference in the nature of the problem. Obviously, in rural areas, the amount of water used for agriculture far exceeds the amount of water used for domestic purposes. So, firstly, the nature of the use, the nature of the problem that you're primarily solving in rural areas is for agriculture, and it could be, as I said, too much or too little. It could be that we don't have enough water, or there is a flood and the crops are being wiped out. So I think that in rural areas the focus is slightly different of the problem, which is as I said, towards agriculture. In urban areas, I think, which I didn't talk about in today's talk, it was a little more rural focused. The problem tends to be on the wastewater side. I would say that a lot of our urban water bodies and we know this throughout India, have a problem of both sewage ingress as well as solid waste. And really, if you want to solve for urban water problems, most cities are not getting water from their local sources. They're going further and further and further away. And this reduces the resilience that cities have, because if the dam far away either doesn't fill up, or there is a competition with local agriculturists protesting कि आप शहर को इतना पानी क्यों बेच रहे हो, there should be some ability to, at least on a stopgap basis, be able to use local water sources. And right now our problem is local water sources are completely polluted. But there are some very, very good examples. There's a good example in Chennai of the Nesapakam Lake, where they are putting treated wastewater into the lake. The lake acts has provides ecological services and so on. But they can also take the water back and treat it to potable level and put it back into the pipe water system, where you're seeing circular loops. So this kind of focus on wastewater and drinking water becomes much more important in urban areas. While in rural areas, still the focus is really on livelihoods, not just agriculture, all kinds of rural livelihoods. Yeah.
The struggle is
Right.
still on when it comes to rural areas. That's what you mean.
Yes. Different struggles, though, I would say. Yeah.
Thank
Okay,
you so
thank you.
much.
Thank you.
Thank
I
you.
think next guest is also here. He's, I think, Dr. A. Mukherjee. He's the director of MRCAWTM from Faridabad. Ms. Mukherjee, please ask your question, please.
Yeah.
Yes, sir, please.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity. This is really a wonderful session, and actually, we are seeing that in India, the gender-based decision making is very much segregated. If you see in the west, east, and northeastern portion, the women are empowered in many decision making, but in the north and northwest country, women are not even allowed to sit with the men. So, how this gender inequality plays in the water decision?
I mean, I think that's a very good point you're saying, that when let me rephrase what you're saying, because what you're saying is that if the society itself has women segregated and women don't feel even comfortable to come and kind of take part in this thing, how are you going to do this wonderful thing we're all talking about, including women in decision making? And I think that's a very good point. I think examples of this in kind of the Jal Shakti program and the Mission Shakti program are there, because what they've done is they have created separate spaces for women to engage, right? Through this, where they may need not necessarily have to come and speak on with men in the public Gram Sabha spaces, but they've been given a role of their own, and maybe this is the place to start, because I completely understand that you can't expect the water sector to solve all societal issues, right? Those issues are long pre-existing divisions. So I think that taking examples from Jal Shakti program and the Mission Shakti program on how you created spaces for separate spaces for women to engage might be the place to start. And then hopefully over time, that what you're saying about women feeling more confident, feeling more comfortable about participating in more mixed uh, for forums might occur. It has occurred in South. You do see now women participating and taking their place in the panchayat meetings, and so it may happen even in those places over time if you create a space for them.
Right. Thank you, Dr. Mukherjee, for asking an important question, and also Dr. Veena for responding to that. We have, I think, we can take one last question. This is by Mr. Vikram Deshmukh. He has suggested something in the form of question that taking the topic of Jal Shakti to schools may help in creating an impact in long term. So Dr. Veena can respond to this, and I think Dr. Ms. Archana Verma also will be joining us. I think there's some connectivity issue, but in the meantime, Dr. Veena, if you want to respond to that, taking the message of
I
conservation and Jal Shakti or Nari Shakti message to the school level, I think Archana ma'am
Right.
has joined back.
Right. I'll just
Uh,
repeat the question for Archana ma'am. That
yes, yes,
the suggestion, it was a suggestion really about taking, how do we take the message of Jal Shakti beyond, not just Nari Shakti, say Jal Shakti, but generally all of the messages around Jal Shakti to schools. I think it's a fantastic idea. I mean, I know that there's been a lot of effort been put into this, even from Central Water Commission. I remember when my son was in school attending, some of the national quizzes and so on that they've already had in place. But I think that the point that was made earlier, saying how can we make not just women but children watchdogs of society is a wonderful idea, and I would go beyond what the suggestion that the gentleman has made to say not just schools but colleges also, because one thing that we have in India is we have lots and lots and lots of people studying engineering, throughout, and data science and so on. One thing that I find is a missing conversation at the undergraduate level, where we don't encourage these young people to participate in these dialogues around data, by play with the data, analyze data, collect data, and the new national education policy NEP has space for all of this. So I think beyond schools, even going to absolutely acknowledge the what he said about schools, but even colleges, bringing all these youth through NEP, the provisions in NEP, to through hackathons, through innovation challenges, through different ways, so that they are looking at data, collecting data, analyzing data, writing what I call data stories, not just looking at the data, but saying interpreting the data. All of this is very, very much required. And any steps that National Water Mission and Arjuna ma'am can take in this direction would be very, very welcome.
On Karo.
Yes, I think Archana ma'am can
I
respond to
think,
that.
water is such a complex subject that only the ministry cannot do on its own. So you would be glad to know that we are partnering with 12 other ministries, uh, Ministry of Education being one of them, to spread this message in schools. In fact, we have partnered with the Ministry of Education, and they have written to all the states to involve children in imparting, through debates, through painting competitions, through dramas, to ensure that the importance of water conservation is um, given to them. So we had requested Department of Education, and they have in turn written to all the states. Plus, we are also ensuring that rainwater harvesting measures are taken for each school, so that each school need not rely only on piped water supply. They all become independent water harvesting entities. Plus, in the curriculum also, we had requested for inclusion of water conservation and water pollution in the curriculum of schools. So they have informed us through NCRT that in some classes they have included water in the curriculum of I forget the classes, but they have done so. So we are partnering with them, and with other ministries also, like Panchayati Raj. We are partnering with even with Mahua. We are partnering with the Department of Rural Development, to ensure that water is the message about water conservation is spread through all the channels that we get. We even had partnered for the first few years with the Nehru Yuva Kendra Sangathan in Ministry of Youth Affairs, and they have done real good service in educating the youth, like Veena said about youth, in educating the youth about the importance of water conservation. and they have been able to reach out to more than 4.5 crore youth in India. So these are the steps we are taking, but we take that it's a very, very it's a good suggestion about expanding it to higher education. We will definitely, we have tried to also engage with higher education, but we will do more. It's been more limited to writing and requesting for engaging the higher education, but through the Nehru Yuva Kendra we have managed to reach through their 680 odd or agencies. We've managed to reach quite a large number of youth.
Right, right. Thank you so much, Archana Verma, ma'am, for sharing with us and the audience that kind of measures being undertaken by Government of India, Minister Jal Shakti with another 12, 13 ministries in terms of taking the message of water conservation to the school level. That is quite important. With your
In
permission,
Assam, we have we during the Mahabalipuram conference, there was Assam's presentation on Jaldut. So what they do is they have made all some school children Jaldoots to measure water quality in their homes and even in schools, and they are reporting on the Jal Jeevan mission. So we have requested, and Ministry of Education has also agreed to, for replication of this measure to all the schools in the country. So they are also giving schools, water testing kits, and many schools are replicating the Jaldut experiment of Assam. So that is also a fantastic measure to inculcate knowledge and also the importance about the water quality, because water quality is a big issue in many areas of the country. So that is
right.
another experiment which Ministry of Education has very kindly, disseminated to all the schools to replicate.
Nice, important, important. I think one more guest has joined us in the backstage, and she wants to come on screen and ask question. I think Miss Neha Rai, she has joined. So Chira, can we have her on screen? Yeah, she's on screen and she wants to ask a
Yes,
question.
sure. Good afternoon, ma'am. Actually, I'm working in the southern part of Haryana, in the village level, or I'm the part of Atal Bhujal Yojana also. So every day I am interacting with so many women in the village level. So, ma'am, just we have seen that the gender equality is really a big problem in this area. और उसके अलावा जो इश्यूज है इट्स नॉट ओनली इन एग्रीकल्चर बेस्ड एग्रीकल्चर और उसके अलावा पॉल्यूटेंट ऑफ वाटर इज आल्सो अ बिग इशू इन द विलेज लेवल बट फॉर एम्पावरमेंट ऑफ वुमेन वी रिक्वायर सम अदर टाइप ऑफ प्रोग्राम क्योंकि अभी जो प्रोग्राम्स चल रहे हैं उसके बाद उनको उस प्रोग्राम में उनको आगे लाना it's not easy. In fact, we identify Jal Saheli in every village. But Jal Saheli ko continue karna. Right now the program is going on, so we are continuing them. But we want कि ज्यादा लोग हमसे जुड़े. तो उसके लिए मैम कुछ नेक्स्ट प्रोग्राम भी क्या जल शक्ति मंत्रालय ऐसा कुछ सोच रहा है?
Archana ma'am can.
स्नेहा जी, कोई भी चीज, कोई भी प्रोग्राम हो, उसका जो इम्पैक्ट है वो इतना ये नहीं होता है कि तुरंत इम्पैक्ट हो जाता
Exactly,
है.
ma'am. I'm
उसके लिए
agree.
बहुत मेहनत करनी पड़ती है और लगे रहना पड़ता है. तो वैसे
Exactly.
तो अटल भूजल योजना जो है वो फेज 2 में भी जाएगा. तो अभी तो बंद होने का ऐसा कोई प्रोग्राम नहीं है, लेकिन एक चीज है कि एक बार जो मुझे जो लगता है, स्पेशली मैंने हरियाणा में बहुत सी महिलाओं से हम लोग मिले थे जो जिनका सम्मान भी किया गया था कि एक बार अगर महिला को ये अंदाजा हो जाता है कि मेरे अंदर इतनी शक्ति है, तो बहुत बार सरकार की जरूरत भी नहीं पड़ती और वो खुद ही बहुत सारे एग्जाम्पल्स हैं जहां शुरू में जो एक चिंगारी जलाने की जरूरत हुई, फिर महिलाओं ने खुद ही अपने परिश्रम करके, खुद ही संगठन बना के, खुद ही गांव में बहुत चेंज लाए। तो मैं जरूर समझती हूँ कि आपको शुरू की परेशानियां हो रही होंगी, और लेकिन अगर आप लगे रहेंगी तो ये जो जल सहेली का जो स्कीम है, ये बहुत जगह जैसे राजस्थान, ये सब जगह में एक इनिशियल सपोर्ट के बाद खुद ही वो बहुत ज्यादा चेंज लाने में सक्षम रही हैं। बिकॉज हर समय सपोर्ट 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 से फिर ना एक सरकार मुखी देखने की भी आदत हो जाती है। तो आपके ट्रेनिंग में
Exactly.
ये कैपेसिटी जरूर रहना चाहिए, ये जरूर रहना चाहिए कि आपको हम सक्षम कर रहे हैं, इसलिए नहीं कि आप हर वक्त सरकार मुखी ही रहें, बट आप लोगों में इतनी शक्ति है कि बिना सरकार जब कभी तो विड्रॉ करेगी ही, आप लोग
Mhm.
फिर भी चलते रहना चाहिए और आपकी शक्ति में कोई कमी नहीं आनी चाहिए। तो ये कैपेसिटी बिल्डिंग ट्रेनिंग में मुझे लगता है जब भी सरकार रीट्रेनिंग होता है तो हमेशा यही होता है कि सरकार ही करते जाए करते जाए करते जाए, तो उससे वो उस ट्रेनिंग में ये कमी रह जाती है कि जैसे ट्रेनिंग बंद होता है फिर यू नो जिस तरह का माहौल था वैसा हो जाता है। तो अभी तो जल सहेली चलेगी, लेकिन आपका प्रयास रहना चाहिए कि वो ना भी चले तभी भी महिलाओं का जो सशक्तिकरण है वो हो जाए।
Right, right. I think we can take a last question. It has come in a written format by Pratyusha Kanchi, and that's for Dr. Srinivasan. Uh, Her question is that which country has got excellent water management and quantification system that India can learn from? If you have any country in mind that the presentation you have given, the best practices, which can India take, keeping in mind the realities of Indian scenario.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at, I mean, Singapore, Israel, these are always put forward as kind of the countries that we should all be looking at. They are advanced technologically, they manage water, highest productivity, lowest leakage, lowest loss, so on and so forth. And I don't think that, I mean, I think India can follow them, but I think we can follow our own path also, because uh, I think what India does very, very well is to be able to do low cost, sustainable systems at scale. And I think that while we can look at the Singapores and the Israels for like the, especially for highest end urban systems and so on, there's no reason why what we've already done through Jaldoot, the Jaldoot program, Mission Shakti program, Jal Saki program, why not we can develop our own systems which are lower cost, cell phone, smartphone based systems, which may create a very different type of bottom up data. So I would say that we should look at those countries and then we should also look at our own strengths and what opportunities are now coming up with cost reduction. The technology costs are coming down, and to see how we can pick the best of both worlds. Um,
Picking the best of the both the worlds, as you have said, and as you have said that India can also set an example to the world in terms of coming up with solutions. Uh, uh, thank you so much, and I think we have come to the end of this question answer segment also of this 50-second water talk. But before we end, I request Archana Verma to say a few words on the presentation by Dr. Vinay Srinivasan and how it was enlightening and insightful for all of us who have joined today to hear from both of you. So over to you, ma'am.
Mm, Thank you, Souvik, and thank you, Veena, for a very insightful discussion. Although I was disappointed to see that there were not many examples, which goes on to show that, we really need to work on this issue of having more women centric, metrics in water management. But your presentation was able to focus that women not only need to be managers but also leaders, and those metrics, let me tell you, because we when we were designing the Jal Shakti Abhiyan, Nari Shakti se Jal Shakti, um, and trying to get some women related metrics for the deputy commissioners to report, we were finding it increasingly difficult to come forward and to include it in the in our checklist or in our monitoring format, so as to get some data which would be transparently, which is in the system and can be transparently sent to us. So you have highlighted a major issue of uh, having women related data in the system, and uh, also focusing on indicators which do not only look at outcomes in terms of water and its increase, but also how it helps the human beings, more particularly the women involved in water. And the measure of success needn't be just increase in water, but the measure of success is how inclusive and equitous it has been. So, in that sense, your presentation was able to highlight that the role, that how women for water is so important. But yes, we need to work more to get gender inclusive data sets in our formats, uh, and take the process of gender equality more seriously in the water sector. Thank you.
Thank you very much
Oh, oh, you
for the
survey.
comments. Yeah.
I think Souvik has some problem. Sometimes technological glitches can really.
I think, ma'am, you can conclude the session as well. We could just, we've reached the end, I think, so we weren't waiting for anything else.
So
Just to
what we
say
can
thank you.
do is, हम शुक्रिया अदा कर सकते हैं सबका, जो अपना समय निकाल के इस वार्ता को सुने हैं, एंड वी होप कि यू फाउंड इट यूजफुल. Okay, Savik, you've come back. We were going to conclude the session.
Yes, yes, ma'am. There was
So
some.
it's over to you now for the conclusion.
Okay, okay. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Archana Verma, Mission Director of National Water Mission, as well as the Additional Secretary Minister of Jal Shakti Government of India, and Dr. Veena Srinivasan, Executive Director of Well Labs. The 52nd edition of Water Talk was quite insightful and full of information, and a lot of important questions were also asked by the audience, by the guest, which were answered by both of you. But if you take the crux of what has been discussed for last 1 hour, is that we have to keep women at the center as the change agent to transform water management in the country for coming years. On this note, we thank all of you for joining us. Do tune in for the 53rd edition of Water Talk, which will be presented again by National Water Mission. Thank you so much. Goodbye. Take care.